Hi fam, it's Dylan's mum Deborah. This is Dyl Friends.
He gives you a back rub and says, you know, you're going well, Brian. Oh, it's special.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Just keep showing up and find a way.
Cam was so nervous he couldn't swallow water.
Handed him a sheet of paper with 6 names and said, Chief, we've got to cut these 6 blokes.
Wow, shut up. I've just been barbed by a stingray, mate.
I'm just yelling at him, you saved my life, you saved my life, you saved my life. Thank you, thank you.
I spent the last, I think it was a couple of weeks in jail. The deepest, darkest moments often bring about our biggest highs.
Yes, welcome back to Dyl Friends. Hey, this week I'm so excited for this, ladies and gentlemen. Before I reintroduce one of my very good friends, my compadre, my life friend.
Life friend.
I was just thinking.
Is that the deepest form of friend?
I
think life friend
we
could
have
be it.
the weirdest relationship ever, and I just want to put I didn't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
I love you, man.
I know. Like even the hug you gave me before, it is just strong and it's.
I don't know if you heard me. I said I love you, man.
I love you too.
Thank you
I
very
love
much.
too.
How are you, Ali?
I deflect love. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's one of my. Makes me feel uncomfortable when it's so pure and genuine. Like, hey, you're giving it up right now.
How are you, my friend?
Great.
It's
I'm
always
great.
good to see you.
Being in this beautiful palace with you and this around this table.
It's good.
Life's good.
I explained a little bit in the intro of this episode that I will record prior to releasing, but if you haven't heard Ali and I talk before, we've already done a podcast together. We've played big roles you've played big roles in my life. I hope that I've had some impact in yours. But a relationship's been a bloody funny one, but I'm sure the audience is already aware of that now, so I think we can jump back in. And this is our second or third sort of pod. We did the one obviously with Vin.
Yep.
We've done a little bit of a mini, but now we're back because we've got a heap of cool stuff to talk about.
Mate, this is awesome, one-on-one. But
Man, I love jamming with you. It's always one of those ones too where let's catch up for a bit, and you put in I put in an hour, and you're like, let's be honest, that's going to go for 4.
Yeah, we're meant to be going to a comedy show at 7, and
we are going to a comedy
really-
show. We're going to Andrew Schultz tonight, so we've really got to get going.
Yeah.
Mate, how are you? What's been happening? You've had a pretty big sort of last couple months.
Mate, it's huge. I feel a little bit scattered, to be honest. Life's good though. I've been lucky to travel. Did a trip to Europe just recently. Got nice and weird, and I think that's the thing. I always want to share weird stuff with you. Right?
I love when you do it.
We just get weird, and so went over to Europe, did a 5-day meditation retreat with Eckhart Tolle from Power of Now, and just sat there meditating with 1,200 people from 70 different countries, and it was all just about getting into the moment and into a nice state of being, and absolutely that was phenomenal until I had to come home to the real world. It was absolute bliss, but it was awesome just sort of being in that space and having the time to be able to do that. So very thankful to my wife who allows me to go on these little journeys to the ends of the earth.
Well, again, let's break down how you do this sort of stuff, because it's all part of the plan. Everything you do is planned out, and it's what I love about you. But I do want to bring up one thing before we talk about Eckhart Tolle, because on a serious but also quite an hilarious note that I found a lot of humour in.
Yeah.
Prior to this, you're this unbreakable sort of figure in my life that whenever anything goes wrong, I always call you and I'm like, man, I need some support here. What do you think I should do? You're such a sounding board for me. And it's like when you have a friend that they're just always up and about, which you are. But recently something did happen to you that nearly floored you, and it nearly had some serious risks on your life, and it was a mosquito.
Yeah, I know. It was very nearly knocked me out.
Mentally toughest guy I've ever met in my life, and the most stringent, anal person in terms of everything. Read every book, knows so much. A mosquito nearly killed you.
Physically, I'm just absolute bag of shit. There's no, I'm realizing it's even worse than a mosquito. God. Went to cricket training the other week and bowled a couple of leggies and ended up pulling my calf muscle. So no, I think physically I'm about as absolutely as weak as anyone can get. So I need to sort that one out.
Yeah, maybe too much mental training, not enough just mindset training.
Just had enough terrible things happen over a very long period of time that I think you just built that mental muscle a little bit more than the physical muscle.
I love it. Yeah. I don't love that you nearly died, but on a serious note, it's good to know that you are good here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about quickly the trip before we get into Recalibrate that I've been sort of talking about a while. Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. You've been on me for ages to read this book. I finally, I haven't read the whole thing, but I finally started it.
Oh, good.
I'm not lying. It is very, it is a challenging it's not a challenging read, but it's quite it's deep.
Yeah,
it's deep, and you have to be. It's not one of those. If you refer it to a movie, like it's not a rom-com.
No.
Like it's interstellar. Like you have to be watching the whole thing to understand what's going on. So. I'm definitely committed to it, and I know that what it's done for you in your life, so I'm very keen to get it done. But for someone out there who maybe hasn't heard of the book, and Eckhart Tolle, and then the trip that you went on, could you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so Eckhart Tolle is like definitely a different one, and not for everyone. And I think he's really dependent on sort of where you are in your point of life too. Like the high level, if you're not familiar with Eckhart Tolle, he's like a 75-year-old German dude, I'm pretty sure, that had a breakdown when he was relatively young and just sat on a park bench, I think, for 4 years or something like that. I'm probably doing his story not the justice it deserves, but yeah, he was, I think, at a really good university and an academic at that time, and just sort of realised that, there's a thing beyond just the normal world, which is just being in a really nice state of being. And I think that's really what I like about his methodology. Is it's pretty simple, but it's about like, all right, like, are you breathing? Can you feel your body tingling? Are you in the moment right now? And to me, like, even, as an entrepreneur and as somebody that likes participating in the world and, in all the different games and stuff that we play, having that, it was just a bit of a game changer, like seeing somebody have this philosophy that was just so simple. And it's like, well, you can't control all the external things, but if you have your sort of internal state of being, and just as simple as breathing or having a drink of your drink and just tasting it, or looking at that plant over there and trying to see its aliveness, right? Like that is just a base level. You can find so much joy and true joy in those sorts of things. So
yeah, well, it was like the other day we went out for lunch, and I really enjoyed this exercise. Like I'd never done it before, and we were like, we can't ever just go out for lunch. There's always like some thing that we're doing when we're there, and you were saying mindful eating, and it was this thing of like, we were picking up, I can't remember what we were eating, but it was like, what do you feel? What colours can you see firstly? What do you think it's going to taste like? What do you think that texture is going to be? How does it feel when it hits you in the mouth? Like your teeth go through certain layers, the smell. What does it feel like when you crunch it, when you let it sit on your tongue for a little bit, when you let it slide down your throat? And we're eating these little tiny things, but what went from just something that you do every day and you normally just go bang and eat it, to like a 5-minute exercise of just like being mindful in that spot. I was like, fucking hell, like I've never done that before. It was so cool to do.
Mate, it's awesome. And like, I think just, that is a little practice for anyone that's out there listening. Like next meal you have, just chew a little bit more and take your time and savor every bite, and just see how that experience of eating just changes.
Yeah, and just like, it's almost like, think about it as much as you can, and you just block out from everything else going on.
And it changes it, right? Because usually we're eating, we're on our phone, we're maybe doing something else, we're running to an event or a meeting or something, and like when you actually break it down, like eating is what nourishes us. Like that food enters our body and then ultimately becomes what we are, and it powers us. And if you can enjoy that experience rather than it just being a means to an end, it's a pretty good philosophy, I think, just for broader life, right? Like we do so many actions where it's like, I just got to get this done so I can go to the next thing. But I think the actual true genius in things like mindful eating is it actually teaches you how to practice that in everything, right? Like even us just now sitting here right now, like, let's just take a breath for a second. It's like, breathe it in and time slows down for a little bit. You breathe it out. And like breath is such a cool thing because it's something that we're doing all the time, and it's the easiest anchor just to go back to, right? Like if you ever, like for me, it's just such a nice calibration of finding those moments where it's like, all right, mind's just really active right now, lots going on, take a pause, breathe in, take that moment, exhale.
I just felt so much more relaxed.
Yeah, now we're just chilled, right?
Just chilling.
No, we're just in the zone now.
I feel so chill.
Yeah,
no, like honestly, I just feel so relaxed.
Should we just have a nap?
No, I want to keep going.
All right, let's do it.
But on a serious note, like even, I don't even know if this is for the podcast, but does it, our relationship, obviously, it feels weird me keep referring to it as our relationship.
Yeah, it's a relationship.
It's a relationship.
It's a very intimate relationship.
It is an intimate
It's a special relationship.
Do I stress you out though? Because I feel like when we're together, you're so calm and you're never in a rush.
Yeah.
Like you're never in a rush. Ever. Like I remember times when we were away and I was like, man, we're going to fucking go. Like things are closing. you're always, and it's a good thing, right? You're very just like there.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm probably the opposite in a sense of like I'm quite. I know sometimes I can be hard to be around because it is quite like. Does that like annoy you?
No, I love it. I like energy, right? Because if I'm sort of sitting in a neutral zone, like there's so much beauty in people that are energized. Like you remind me of my kids. You know,
They're like 6.
You're better than them. No, come on.
I'm not better than them.
But it's beautiful, right? Like, because I think that's like, it's also about embracing everything in life, right? So I love people that have high energy. Like my wife's got really high energy, you know, kids have high energy. A lot of the people that I love the most in the world have really high energy. And that energizes me actually.
You do have high energy though, but you're just able to, maybe it's, I didn't articulate it probably, it's just that, the ability to to stay present, what we're talking about, and it comes from years of practice. I know with all the stuff that you're doing. But hey, I'm going to finish that book and then we'll come back and do more chatting about that. Future Golf.
Yeah.
Before we get into Recalibrate and we talk about that program, how's everything going at Future Golf?
Mate, Future Golf's amazing. Like largest golf club and community and platform in the country.
Crazy.
You know, it's nearly, we're going to be heading into our 10th year, which is insane. Like it still feels like a startup, but 10 years in, and just see how many people have helped play the game and get into the sport and where it's at now. It's just, phenomenal. I pinch myself all the time just seeing that, something that started off truly as a passion project, a labour of love, has gone from me and a few mates to probably one of Australia's largest sporting organisations.
It's unbelievable, man. You've done such a good job. And then to think that you started that company that's absolutely killing it, and we could do an episode on that itself, which we will. But then now working with Vin, who we did the podcast with last year over in Adelaide. Absolute honour to meet Vin, and like
that was a great episode.
That was just the funnest.
Felt so nourished.
Yeah, that was the funnest time. Just us three, just sort of sitting in a room, just talking, just about life and his story, your story, how you guys connected, all the things that we learned from that. Like to this day, I still get messages about that episode. So I know there's going to be a lot of interest in this next phase. And for anyone who listens to the minis, I've been doing solo minis sort of once a month when I am not away from the crew. And I've mentioned this before, but I did this program with Ali. It's Ali and Vin's business called Recalibrate, which is launching.
Yeah,
is it
launched when this goes
live?
Will it be
launched?
Yeah.
Fuck, that's awesome, man. I'm so excited. And I don't even know this because we'll get to the story of how we did it and how, and I want to know how it even came about. But is it just going to be? Can people get it online?
Yeah, it'll be an online program.
They can get online, and can you do it in person as well?
At the moment, we don't have plans to. We might do it in person, but to start with, it'll be online.
Yeah. Awesome. So we'll have all of the links and stuff as well. Yep. I've had so many people interested. I've already got a mate I connected with you yesterday because he's so keen to get his hands on it early because I've just been raving about it. But talk us through, like, I think no one can explain it better than maybe the person whose business it is, because I would butcher it. But what is Recalibrate? Why'd you come up with it, and how did it all come about with you and Vin? Like, we know you and Vin's story, but how did you come up with it together?
Yeah, so just starting with Vin, like for those that don't know who Vin Jang is, he's probably, I'd say he's arguably Australia's leading thought leader. He started off sort of as a magician, as a communication teacher, and he's got a great communication course and program called Stage that he offers out there, and just, fortunate to really call him a brother, and he's been one of my best mates for nearly the best part of a decade now. And I guess Recalibrate firstly was just born out of that friendship, and that sort of brotherhood where we were both experiencing similar things at a similar point in life, going through our entrepreneurial and professional journeys. And we'd gotten to a point where, on paper it looked pretty successful for both of us, but deep down, we still weren't really feeling that alignment or that clarity or that, whatever the words are, happiness. We still felt a little bit lost and confused. We're like, well, we've done all the things that people told us that if we did all these things, well, we should have happiness and just feel amazing all the time. But why don't we? Right? And I think then we started speaking to other people, and it's like, do you feel this as well? No matter what part of life they're on in the journey. And I was like, yeah, I kind of feel the same thing as well. And that was about 6-7 years ago. So together, we just had this, I guess, inspiration to try to figure it out and turn it into a process and a system, and figure it out for ourselves as well. So we were the original guinea pigs. And I was like, okay, well, what does the modern day operating system need to look like? You know, to navigate the world that we live in today, what is that? And we're both avid readers. Like, I've read 700 odd books, and Vin's read hundreds of books and spent so much and invested so much into his own personal development as well. And we're like, all right, well, let's start with just all the best lessons that we've ever learned, right? And then what does that look like? And I guess we just kept distilling it. And the core of what Recalibrate really is, it's taking the best of, say, the business world, because that's where I was looking. I'm like, in the business world, you sit there and you have a strategy and you have a plan and you have, you know where all your resources are going, and you know what you have to work with, and you know what game you're playing, and you know what the vision is for the company and the business that you're working within. But I'm like, most of us, we don't really do that with our own personal lives. Right? And very few of us invest much time into actually thinking about who we are, where we're at, and where we want to go. Right? And I don't know why we do that, because, like, realistically, we spend so much of our time on others, right? On other people's businesses, working and doing all these other bits and pieces. But when you ask most people, it's like, well, who are you really? Where are you at right now? And how are you feeling? There's a varying degree of answers that you get back from there. And that was kind of the start of Recalibrate, right? So say 3-4 years ago, Vin's going through some stuff in his professional life, and it's like, okay, well, let's try this. And it's like, oh, well, that worked. All right, maybe we put this we make this an annual thing, or we look at this every 3 months, and then I would have something happen. I'm like, oh, I tried this and this kind of work. So we're like scientists just testing this process on ourselves. And then, yeah, it's sort of come together now, especially over the last year, where we're confident to share it with other people. Because that was the other thing, is there's a lot of programs out there. And we're like, look, we're only going to share something publicly once we have validation that it works, that we're really solid, you know, that we think that the science is solid, that's behind it, that it works for a really wide variety of people as well. And we're getting to that point now where we can release it. But yeah, I think fundamentally, Recalibrate, it's like an operating system, but for your life, right? So it's a process, takes maybe 10 to 12 hours, where you go through 11 different modules. And then by the end of it, you should have a pretty good idea of where you're at in life, and like a really good sort of data understanding of, this is what's important to me. These are the things that I have to deal with. These are the things that interest me, that I'm passionate about. These are the things that light me up. These are my values. And then you sort of analyze that through the system that we've got. And then after that, you start actually planning what that looks like as you move forward. Whereas a lot of the times we just make decisions, we take actions, we go down a path, and we're like, oh shit, where am I? Like, why am I here, and why am I not that happy? And it's usually because we're in a reactive position, or we're in a position that wasn't really planned out. You know, you mentioned that earlier, like, yeah, my life isn't planned per se. It's just very aligned. Right? And
the theory behind that too, like, I've directed the thing, I haven't at all, but more meaning that, because we talk about it a lot, is we actually do, in your life, you really nearly do get everything you want. But it's ensuring that you're aligned with getting the things that you want. Because I love what Vin says and what you say around that whole thing, is like, if you look at what you wanted when you were 19, you've got it. Yeah. So it's like making sure that you're not living the life that you thought you wanted when you were 19. It's like, okay, I've changed from when I'm 19, or I'm 21, or I'm 27, or I'm 30, or I'm 40, and going, no, I want to realign now to what is important to me now, not then. Yeah. The classic one when you said it is like, every kid my age was like 15 going, you know, I really want a Holden VS Commodore. Yeah. And then you get to 18, and then you're like, you get it, and you're like, fuck, did I really want that Commodore? I probably should have just maybe got like something a bit more like
affordable, that I could put petrol in,
or something that's like just a bit better in kilometres or something like that. It's just very just timed out quickly. But
I wanted a Mitsubishi Lancer with a metallic blue Lancer with the metallic blue earring, and I'm glad.
And did you recalibrate?
I didn't do either of those. Okay, so fortunately, it never happened.
You recalibrated before.
I'm glad that didn't happen. Yeah.
So then, I suppose where I was really lucky enough to come in was, you invited me down to your place. We had a 2-day little retreat down at your pad in down the peninsula, and sort of flicked the phone off. Got the okay to come away for a couple of nights from Juzz, and just went and had a mature male v male sleepover at your beach house, and we just got our workbooks out and went through it.
Went through the process.
It was the best though, because it was so weird in a good way, of like, how often do you just go away with someone,
Yeah.
chuck on some incense,
Yeah.
listen to some like Icelandic, like peace music, and just talk about life with someone?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Mate, I loved it.
So
It's probably my favourite thing to do.
it was so
in the
good.
world. Like, I love it because you get an insight
Man, we had
into
the fire
someone.
on and we're just chilling, like
It was
talking.
amazing, right? Like,
Yeah.
And that's like, how cool is it just to sit there and dig into your life for the best part of 2 days and to like try to figure things out, you know, and explore it from all different angles, and then at the end of it, wrap it back up together and be like, hey, this is what it looks like.
You know what? I don't want to pretend it was easy though.
It's
either.
not
Like
easy.
it was actually quite challenging. Like there was parts where,
Yeah.
you know, you avoid a lot of things in your life, and like I'm not pretending that it was an easy process, but it was a rewarding process, and it's something that you need to go through. You know, it's not gonna. If you're really honest, when you do go through a lot of these stuff, it's hard. Yeah. Like it's super hard. Not to come up with the answers, I suppose, but it's just shit that you probably don't want to think about as much.
That's right.
But
there's some truths, right?
There is some truths.
that
There's
come
definitely some truths.
And that's how we kind of designed it as well. It's like it will give you as much as you give it. You know, it doesn't really have doctrines or philosophies, or it doesn't tell you how to do anything, but it's a framework that allows you that if you're like, all you really have to do is go in with an open mind. It will guide you and hold your hand through the process, but your job as the participant is to be as open as you can in that moment. And what we find as well is with this type of process, it doesn't end. So even if your first round, you're like, I left some on the table, you're still going to get value out of it, because then you do it again in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, when you understand yourself a little bit better. You're in a fortunate position where you already invested a fair bit into, I think, understanding who you are.
But even then, it's just that like it's diminishing returns, right? Like the first time you do it, you learn a shit ton. Then the second time, you pick up 2 or 3 bits, and like I remember we did it. Then I went away again. I read it, and I was like, actually, I don't reckon that's right. Like we'll get into some bits today about talking about it, but I think the values process, which, you know, I've done countless amount of value sessions, and I remember even when you brought that out, I was like, oh fuck,
Here we go again.
Yeah. But it was so different to any other values session I'd done before, and I found, you know, maybe I think it was like 6 words, and now I've got like 3. Because I've been able to, I've got 4, because I've been able to go, well, you know, these 2 actually already fit in here. I don't need to, you know, they can intertwine, and you find that realistically it nearly comes down to 1 word, because they all work in certain ways. So I think each time you do it, each time I look back through it and read through it, it's for me now, it's like when we catch up and I just check in and look at what I've done, where I've sort of written down what I wanted to achieve versus where I'm achieving it is really cool. And I think there's just, I don't know, something about it that, like, I think when you give yourself that much, when you invest in yourself that much, it just, you feel good about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you do one, not PT and everything's fantastic. It's and don't get me wrong, I'm still doing that as well. But this was quite a lengthy process. It's quite hard. You're not going to get it done in one sitting, but you can go through and get it done. It's something that, not a lot of people have access to, but now they do through this. But do you want to talk about just that overview of like the stages you go through?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think that's a cool part. Like I suppose we'd be here for 4 hours, well, literally 11 hours if we did the whole thing. But we'll go through the overview. Well, you can go through the overview, then maybe talk about a few of the main parts that I've really enjoyed.
So as I mentioned before, it's got about 11 steps. So we start off with a bit of a self-awareness exercise just to sort of see, all right, prior to starting, where do you feel that you're at? And one of the cool things about this, and I realised this after doing it with multiple people, is people will come in at the beginning and they'll be like, I'm so lost and life feels so messed up and I don't know where the last 20 years of my life went. But when you actually break it down, like the cool unlock at the end of it is probably 80% of the choices that you made and where you're at right now, they actually are pretty aligned. You've just lost perspective of where that sits right now. And that's nearly one of the nicest things, I think, early on in this process, is just changing that, like shifting that mindset of everything's fucked to actually 80% of it's pretty decent.
Good. Just need to fix up a little bit more.
Just doesn't feel that good. Because sometimes that 5 or 10% that isn't right, it can feel like 90% of it's messed up. You know, it's nearly the principle of the 80-20 rule there. where
I love that rule.
right?
Yeah.
So the 80-20 rule is awesome because it's essentially, if you break down anything, whether it's life, business, whatever it's going to be, you'll find that often 20% of the inputs result in 80% of the benefits, right? So even if you look at your friends, you might have 50 friends, but there's a very good likelihood 10 of those give you 80% of the enjoyment, right? In a business, you might have 10 products, very good chance 2 of them make 80% of the sales. Right, so this framework sort of exists in a lot of different areas. It's also on the negative side, like you might have one person in your life that causes 90% of your unhappiness.
Yeah.
Right, so you can break it down, but we use the 80-20 rule a lot throughout this process because we're trying to find the biggest items that are going to have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
Right, the needle movers.
And also, I love that point because you can't control everything, but you can control the majority.
That's right. Yeah, and it gets you. It allows you to focus and prioritize as well what you focus, like what you put your energy into and your resources into. Then we go into memorable moments. I love this.
Love this. Have you been seeing my captions on Instagram?
You're all over it.
Oh man! So it's
memorable
funny because
moment king.
No one even.
You've got hashtag moments.
I
like
it's
it.
just a little. Everyone will understand once they do the program. But whenever I post something now, like I just write like if it's like a thing, and just write like moment.
I love
just
that.
because I think I did it with this one, making moments, and it was just like in Bali with like me and Max and like Juz, and I was like, that's a fucking moment, man. And I'm probably jumping in before you explain what a memorable moment is, but I think that one for me was such a cool thing. It was like the exercise of like, you know, we pulled out. You said to me like, pull out your phone.
Yeah.
Like let's start looking through and find those times where you were like, that's something that I would call a moment. But can you explain it your way, because it's much better than mine?
No, you did a pretty good job there, but it's pretty much that. We're going back over the last 12 months, and we're trying to capture all of the memorable moments, all the things that really lit you up, that when you look at on your phone it makes you smile, or when you think about it's like it energizes you a little bit, where you're like, oh, I wouldn't mind doing that again. And we all have them, right? But often we don't capture too many of these.
And you forget to capture them.
And you forget them. And memory is horrible, right? Like I had this happen to me the other day, probably about 2 weeks ago. I was just feeling a little bit flat. And I'm like, I had this narrative in my head where I'm like, oh, I haven't done anything of note for the last 2 weeks. And I think it was just an energy thing, right? Like energetically I was feeling a little bit down. Maybe I was a little bit under the weather. And I started nearly getting into that narrative. I'm like, oh, well, life's a bit shit at the moment, you know, like, and then who can I go blame for this, right? And then I was fortunate. I have all my memorable moments. I journal a lot. I was able to look back over the last 3 weeks, and rather than sort of buying into that emotion that I was feeling in that moment there, I was able to actually look back over the last 3 weeks and see a list of 25 things that I've done.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of them are epic. So I'm like, okay, now if I'm actually being objective, there's actually a lot of good things happening in my life. So my narrative of life is shit, or whatever it's going to go into, isn't actually true right now. But what is shit is there's something going on emotionally, or whatever it is, and I need to actually solve that. Like or there's an energetic block here, like I'm just low energy, maybe I need to eat some more vegetables or go for a run or something like that. And it's so like, that's where we're flawed as humans, that we can build something that doesn't deserve to be built up into something so drastic, when realistically, when you actually break it down and you have things like your memorable moments logged down, it's a really easy anchor to go back to and be like, oh, well, I've actually got a lot of evidence here that some good things are happening.
For sure.
Right.
And I think like that, the exercise that, you know, we went through with, because when you said to me like, oh, what's your most memorable moments of this year? And I was like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we like scrolled through your phone. And now I do that quite often. You know, it's really easy now. Not easy, but it's really cool now that you've got a son, and like I've got a son, and it's, you know, they're all memorable moments because you're looking at them. But if I even just scroll through, it's like, fuck, you know, I was in Bali recently. Was lucky enough to go to Singapore, celebrated one of my best mates' weddings. What else is going through here? If I go back even further, met a guy in Australia when we played golf together in Bali, which was absolutely unbelievable. Like, connection that I never thought I'd make. Went to a mate's Bucks party, hosted an event at Lululemon. Like, that's the first event I've ever hosted like fully by myself. Sat down with a couple draft picks, did a podcast. I'm just scrolling through my phone here, just seeing what's there, and it's like, you go, fuck, you know, life's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, right?
You know what another one was, which I'll get to. So in my, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but Do you remember what one of my goal action items was?
There's
so many of them. I'm going to test you.
Yeah.
But I think when I say it, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
Was to do with family.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
Was it hang out with your mum more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is.
Oh,
So
there
like
you go.
we went
That's
to
beautiful.
Noosa with me, Max, and Mum, and I was like, I
love
booked
that.
that trip, and I was like, I'm going away with my
Yeah.
mum, and I want to take her away.
I love that. I remember that was one of your big insights. Like you wanted to, I think that's one of your big ones is that you want to be so amazing for everyone in your life, right? But you're also extremely busy. So
that was a big one that came out for
Yeah.
me. Was like something that caused me well, if we go into the next part, challenging moments or bigger things. It was like a thing that caused me a lot of I don't know if anguish is the right word, but like disappointment maybe, or getting down on myself, was trying to be the best version and do everything I can in my life. But then when I'm with Mum, Juz and Max and my family, like being present. And I always sort of tell this story about like when, you know, I'll be at home and it's only happened a couple of times, but it's enough because it breaks your heart. It's like, I remember I was on my phone and Mum was talking. I mustn't have been listening. And she was like, oh no, it's okay. He's very busy. I was like, fuck, you know, that cut me up. And I remember thinking from that, we did our thing. I was like, you know what? I'm making an effort here to like be present with Mum, go away on these, make moments and call her on the phone, which I do, but you want to be present when I'm with her.
Love it. Super proud of you actually actioning it, right? Because that's what life's about, I think, is we have some things that we do that are aligned and make us feel good, and then inevitably there's going to be things that are important to us that we let slip as well. And it's like, how often can we then be aware of those, pick them up, and then just do our best at trying to improve it even just a little bit, right? So that's awesome that you were able to go through that process and then also deliver and act on it and have some wicked moments with your mum.
It was really cool.
Which is so special.
It was really special.
I love that.
Which was great.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'm just caught now going through my phone looking at these memorable moments. I went to, obviously, about the Clubby Sports breakfast as well with the community. Heaps of shit.
And
Very
that's
cool.
last month.
So just making brekkies, making moments.
Yeah.
Which is sick. And we're already planning something for next year. I don't know what that's going to be, but we're going to do that.
We'll do that tonight.
So memorable moments, do you reckon we've covered that pretty well?
Absolutely.
From there, you know, opposite flip side goes to challenging moments.
Goes to challenging moments. And I love the example you just used then. You took something that was a challenging moment and you actually turned it into a memorable moment. And often they're going to be linked, right? Like it's like anything light and dark, yin and yang. There's always going to be a polarity. So the things that usually make us feel really happy in our memorable moments, there's probably going to be something associated to that that's going to be on the downside of the challenging moments too. And it's having awareness of those. But often I think what we do is we try to ignore those or suppress those, or we leave them in the too hard basket, and then they actually diminish how we can enjoy our memorable moments. Right, so that's why we have that in the exercise where it's like, all right, we're going to start off with the light and fuzzy. We're going to find all the things that are great, but then let's have a look at just a few big items here that if we're able to address them, accept them, solve them, get help on them, how would that then change our lives moving forward?
These are two really cool parts to start, because with the challenging moments as well, as you said, a lot of them are contrary to the memorable ones.
That's right.
And it's often like, because you're not doing the memorable ones as much as you want to do them, as we just said. But I think for me on that as well was a lot around the fact that like each time I looked at the challenging moment, without like, not all of them, but like a lot of them, I could pick something good that had come from it anyway. So I think it was cool to sort of put them down, being like, okay, look, like, no, my early this year, which I've been really honest with you about, like the anxiety stuff that I was facing around, like, you know, new dad, few other weird fucking bits and pieces, it just like tripped me up. It's like from that, it forced me to like super look into myself, learn a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but I probably feel now I've had like the most understanding of what I am and who I am and how I am better than I ever have before. And I know that's not a state that, you know, life is ups and downs and things can ebb and flow, and they do, but at the moment, without, unfortunately, of going through some really trying periods and challenging periods, that I wouldn't be at this stage I am now.
Oh, for sure. I love that. And our challenging moments usually are the ones that define us, right? It's like from whether we use the word failures or learning experiences, but it's these, like I've always found that if I really go deep into my challenging moments and whatever comes up there, that's where the next evolution of growth happens, realistically.
Are you happy to use your, like, I don't want, your story and everything, but like you have an incredible outlook on the passing of your mother through COVID. Are you happy to talk about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
like that's one of my defining challenging moment stories over the last couple of years. So when was it now? It was April 2022. My mum was battling cancer and she was living in Perth at the time. So we were in the middle of COVID where you couldn't get over to Perth. Like Perth was a different country and, then there's all the COVID challenges that are happening as well. But Mum sort of got diagnosed maybe in 2021 and was going through that, and it was like, all right, this is pretty serious. It's going to be stage 4. So it was really like, first of all, navigating, well, Mum's been diagnosed with cancer, and what does that then look like, and what are our options available as a challenging moment. But then also coming to terms that, well, there's a good chance it's because of how things are playing out right now with COVID and everything, might not be able to see each other. So using this framework, it actually helped me a fair bit, because it was like, okay, well, realistically, I've just got to accept that this is happening right now, right? Because the initial reaction for me, I was like, deny this. Like, how do we actually navigate this? And it's really just accepting it and nearly owning it and being like, okay, well, this sucks. This is the situation. What can we do? What are our options? And then Vin actually gave me a really cool idea at that time, which he had just done recently with his parents. He's like, sit down, have like a 4 or 5 hour Zoom call with your mum and just ask every single question that you've ever had, right? So we did that and had probably the deepest conversation that we've ever had. And the big thing there was, regardless of how things played out, I didn't want to have that feeling. And I was fortunate, because it was a diagnosis, that I actually did have this opportunity where we could get closure on some stuff. So we had this 5 hour conversation about everything: childhood, her upbringing, like what her relationship with my dad was like what life was like, the things that she faced, the challenges that she faced, and just jammed on everything, like she was giving me advice on how to be a parent moving forward and how to treat Chantal, my wife, and like giving all these, her and Chantal were like best mates, so we had all these things, and it was the most nourishing 4 hour call that just gave me one of those things where I'm like, well, I've had like the best conversation with Mum. We've said everything that we need to say here now. So every single moment that we get to share from here on in, that's a bonus. So like super grateful that we did that call. But it was like, okay, well, what are the moves? Because it would have been really easy in that position to just be like, I'm just going to get super emotional right now, blame the government, blame the world that I can't go see her, and just get more into that mindset. Where I was like, how quickly can we sort of shift this so we can actually get something that's a bit more positive and nourishing? And even while she was going through her journey of, chemo and everything, that she was all like, I really wanted to make sure that she was feeling as supported as possible, given that we couldn't really be there with her during that period of time. So that was sort of stage 1. And then, as it got sort of COVID started wrapping up, the borders opened, and it was like around April 2022, we got the opportunity to fly her over, because one of her things in that call, I'm like, well, what are your bucket list items? And she's like, oh, well, I've never flown business class, and I want to do a hot air balloon trip. It's like, awesome. So we booked her business class flights and then got her over to Melbourne. The hot air ballooning nearly got cancelled on the day that it was pretty much the day after she arrived. And then they're like, all right, no, we're going to go. Otherwise, the weather's looking pretty average for the next few days. Probably shouldn't have gone. We ended up landing on Amy Park and made the news and all these things, but it was incredible. So that was ticked off. And then pretty much the day after that, she's like, oh, I'm not really feeling too well, and ended up getting admitted to hospital. And we sort of had 7 days together where I'd get to go in for 2 hours and pretty much just sit there holding hands and chatting a little bit. And then she passed away after that. And it was like, that was sort of our journey. But just as we're going through that, it was like, okay, well, this is the way that I live life is I look at these challenging moments, and it's how do you make the most out of them with what you've got to play with, right? That's just sort of my perspective on it.
And look at the moments that you got to create.
And look at the moments that we got to create, right? And the journey, and I think just the way that we were able to navigate that together. And she was amazing as well. Like, she had the most peaceful sort of passing, and just who she was as an individual. Like, that just became one of my goals after. It's like, well, how do I shine her light, that she shared with the world onwards.
It's beautiful, man.
And that's why I'm so glad I get to share her sort of story in the program as well, in a bit more detail. But yeah, it's nearly the framework that was created for challenging moments that we then go through.
For sure, and that's like it's all a case study of what you've been through.
Yeah.
Can I ask this?
Yeah.
Did she like the business flight or the hot air ballooning more?
Oh, I don't know.
Business flights are...
Business class flights, yeah. I think she was pretty wrapped with that. Like, she was posting that one on her Facebook page, and she's pretty wrapped, in the lounge, and just like
funny parents when they just
lapping that up.
Everything.
She liked that stuff a little bit.
Yeah. The high flyer mentality.
The hot air balloon was a little bit stressful. And, didn't know. Like one of the other balloons landed next to the freeway, so it was a horrible day for them. I think the wind did something chaotic.
Through that, there's multiple steps, and I don't want to... there's a lot in here that a lot of people will be able to do when they check it out. But I thought what would be cool is maybe if I told you some of my favourite...
Yeah. Well, when did you do yours? Was it about 3 months ago?
No.
2-3 months ago?
I reckon it was like 5 months ago.
All right, 5 months ago. Time flies.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. Might have been.
4 months ago?
Yeah, it was in winter because I had the fire on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would love to know like your insights and what you walked away with.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I walked away with a lot. Like, I had no idea what I was probably going into, to be completely honest. I
never
knew that
do when you and me are hanging out.
No, well, I reckon, how long do you reckon it took you to get me down there? Like, I was putting it off. Not putting it off, but there's a lot of things going on where I was like, I'm not ready for this yet. Like, I need to... Like, I just wasn't honestly in the right frame of mind to be like, I can dedicate time and energy to do this. But the one thing I did probably realise, even when I was down there, was like, there's never a right time to do this. But in saying that, it was a bit of a just shit going on everywhere. And I was like, I want to be able to dedicate energy to it. But yeah, there's never a right time. So I think like, don't be waiting for be like, hey, I'm calm, I'm going to go do this. It's actually quite the opposite. You should probably do it whenever you can. Well,
it's the thing that like, if you are feeling whatever the word is, lost, unclear, shit, whatever, this is one of those things that can sort of change the direction of how things are like heading. It would be the way that I've seen it.
And I think as well, like a part that maybe to go through as well is like, I wasn't necessarily... So whether you're feeling a little bit lost or a little bit like not aligned or not calibrated with where you want to go, versus you actually just want to get better and you're actually thriving and want to take yourself to the next level. It's it's for both. Because it's just one of those things that you can get. Like I didn't necessarily go into it going, fucking hell, I needed fix something. It was more like, hey, how can I actually just enhance a few things that I'm doing, maybe improve a little bit else. So I
just
think
on that point, like just what we've seen so far is there's people that are really high performers. Like just as we look at the character types that this has attracted so far, is you've got the high performers that either want to take it to the next level or just are high performing but still not feeling all the benefits of their high performance. Like they're still feeling a little bit lost or anxious or like uncertain or imposter syndrome. It's like, I think this really helps them with clarifying that. And then the other one is what I'd probably call high potentials, right? People that want to do great things with their life, or they want a better life, or they're struggling at the moment because something's happened in their life and they just want to get it back on track. Right. And that's what it's really designed to, is like, it's going to maximize the best version of who you are in this moment. Right. And that's kind of the aim of it, because so many programs out there are like, hey, do this program and I'm going to do this and give you all these unfulfilled promises. Whereas all I think this does is it just gives you the best version of what you are right now in where you are in life. And then an optimistic sort of outlook and a legit pathway that you've nearly designed yourself that can take you to the next level.
And you keep designing too.
Yeah, and that you keep designing. You know how. Like, we're teaching you how to do it. So it's like, you don't need to, it's not something where you're like, oh, I need Vin and Ali there to do this. It's like, once you're given sort of the frameworks, and that's the thing that we probably haven't spoken about, is I bring sort of the science side to this. The real magic in this as well is Vin's storytelling and the art and the emotional connection that he's able to open up.
Vin's incredible.
So like that you go and like, for people that haven't checked Vin out, like Vin's he's like followed by The Rock now and Joe Rogan and Chris Pratt, and like he's
I actually
absolutely
saw one
insane.
yesterday, another comedian. What's the guy's name? Super funny dude.
Yeah.
Can't remember his name, but he's following him as well. Because I always check. I'm like, he's up to like 3 million
mate.
followers now. I'm like, oh my God, who else is following Vin?
He doesn't even know who follows him anymore.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it'll just be a random mate of his that will be like, yeah, somebody follows you. And he's the most humble dude. So the day I was with him when The Rock started following him. So The Rock's like the 4th most followed person in the world. And then he wakes up in the morning and he's like, oh, check this out. We look at him like, what? And yeah, the Rock's following him. And I'm like, surely we cancel today and we just celebrate, we do all that. He's like, yep, all right, let's go back up. I've got some emails to reply to and got some admin stuff that I need to do, and just walked it off. I'm like, if that happened to me, I'd be going absolutely mental. And yeah, what? Joe Rogan invited him to go hang out.
I'm coming to that.
Right, and Vin's like, oh, I've got a baby on the way, so I really want to, but maybe next year. Like, this dude is next level, like in terms of just how aligned he is with his values, how much he values his family, how like generous he is and genuine.
But he wasn't
is.
always like that.
Yeah, like
whereas in like from his own story through Recalibrate, that was something he challenged. He was challenged with. So back to me. I know you're talking about Vin and Joe Rogan and stuff, but I wouldn't mind talking about myself for a little bit. I think my favorite parts was that first part around moments and like how much that sort of intertwines through, and like realistically life is about moments. Like it's how many moments can you collect, how many cool things can you do, or and that doesn't have to be trips and things away. It's what a moment is to you. Like a moment might be
having a coffee with
as many people as you can in the world,
right.
or whatever that. But for me, I think I resonated. My moments came up very consistently were trips away with Juz and Max, who, you know, we had recently just come into our life, so hadn't been happening yet, but and I've already actioned that like 3 times. Yeah. And that's the other one,
so cool how you travel with little man, and like that's awesome.
Yeah.
So many new parents just locked down and they don't go out into the world. So that's
because we knew that it was important to us.
I love that.
We want to do it no matter how hard it is.
So cool.
And the other one was the golf trips.
Yeah.
Like I say that, so it sounds stupid, but I looked back through my phone and I was like, fuck, the moments I've had this year was like King Island with Ali, Scotland with Ali, went to up to the to Better Beer Golf Day recently in Sydney, went to the McFadden Golf Day, and I was like, fuck that. These are moments I love and I remember as well. So they were sort of 2 that stood out, and I was thinking that moments, the thing that I realised from the moments that was a sort of a reality was like, I thought about them and I was like, I haven't initiated any of these. And I was like, imagine how many more I can have if I actually start being proactive. Like all of the moments were like Juz going, hey, we should do this and go away. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try and get time off work. Or you were like, let's go on a golf trip. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So they're almost forced upon me, but ended up being the best thing I did. Yeah. So it was like, how can I actually take a cool insight? Yeah, how can I actually take a proactive approach to making more myself and just saying yes to more moments. The challenging moments part that we spoke about earlier around, like, you know, I've always been a really firm believer of, like, unfortunately, like, adversity is the best worst thing ever. Yeah. It doesn't get easier. You don't want it, but you're always going to get something from it, whether you like it or not. And I think through going through all those challenging moments, like everything I put down, there's been some form of something that I've got out of it, and I think that's a really cool thing. I think there was the 2 other parts that were absolutely huge, as I mentioned earlier, around values and going through that values exercise. And it, again, this is a lot more stringent when you go through the process, but the reason you actually have values and why you have them, because then it makes decisions easier to choose the moments that you want to have. So like if I have values that then align with where I want to go, I'm going to get more moments of what I want to do. Yeah. And I think by doing that, like going through that whole exercise of picking like 40 to 20 to 10, and it gets so much harder to break them down. My 4 values that I, to this day, have been, you know, still really intertwined with my life is, I've said it fucking 14 times, but moments. So creating moments. Yeah.
You're a moments guy.
I'm a moments guy. Environment. Yeah. One of the most important things to me, hands down. And like, you're not going to always get that right, but like, from simple as clean room, clean bedroom, clean house. If you can sort of get that right, you're often going to be in a good way. It's like when you're in school, you know, you look at your backpack, you're like, you can sort of tell how you're going at school. And I think like for Juz and I, it's not even so much about like the cleanliness. 'Cause that is hard when you have kids, let's be honest. Like it's very hard to like keep a clean house, but just a loving environment, being around the people that you love, coming in here every day to work and like working with people that I respect and that push me, want me to be better. I want them to be better. That's super important to me, and obviously who I spend time with. Freedom was the third one. Just, I think having, not that I probably take the opportunity a lot, and you know, people would argue, a lot of my friends think I don't do any work, but the freedom to like, if I do want to go and take the day off and have it with Max, or I do want to go play golf, or I do want to go away for a few months, like I'm incredibly grateful that that is a value of mine, and I'm incredibly grateful that I am able to do that at the moment, and I want to keep being able to do that. And the fourth one, which is huge, and again, it's something that I don't necessarily, I've learnt to love, but don't necessarily, you know, your values can't be all ones that you jump out of bed for, but growth. Like if I'm not growing, I'm going backwards. And I think that feeling of being comfortable is for me personally, like I think it's really dangerous. I always want to be just trying to learn new things. Like even just reflecting on today that I'm super proud of. Like I've not that it's been a bit, but I had a meeting with a friend this morning, meeting with these other people, and then did a podcast on nutrition, did a podcast on sleep, and then now I'm doing a podcast with you about this other, and I'm like, to be able to push myself
and growth,
but to be able to push myself and go like, I'm talking about something I have no fucking idea about into something I have no fucking idea about into another thing I have no fucking idea about, but just give it a crack and like grow in those areas. That's a tick in my values. So
mate, well, I think one of the special things you do, like for your community and the audience there, is you're a gateway for people. You know, you make things that people maybe previously wouldn't have considered accessible. Like the amount of, like I realize this when on the rare occasions I go to the gym, there's a couple like 20-year-old guys there.
You go to the gym?
Yeah, and like it happened a couple of times by accident. I got injured. But like I'd been speaking to this guy about future golf for a year or whatever. And then he was like, heard Dyl talk about future golf, so it must be legit, you know, and like, or Dyl's getting into golf and it must be legit. But like, I think you're a real sort of icon and beacon like for your community in terms of going and learning these things, getting an understanding, but then making it really accessible to other people, right? Which is pretty special, because if I was like, if I'm in that age group, and even myself, like being your mate, like I've been open up to different perspectives and stuff through your pod and the people that you've connected me with over that time. So it's awesome. Like you're living so aligned in terms of, I think, what your superpowers are, which is using your ability to connect with other people and really adding value to them, you know, and doing it in an entertaining and chilled way that doesn't feel like it's in your face, and you don't really spook it, but
I appreciate it, man. It doesn't, like I think
crying?
That's, hey?
Are you crying a little bit?
No, I had something in my eye.
Okay.
I think it's it's something I'm trying to, I don't know. It's a funny one too, hey, because like, I think there's a part where I don't know what category this part came under, but I think we speak about it a lot where I get really, I'm so grateful for everything that's in my life. Like, so, like, you don't have no idea how grateful I am. Well, you do, but everyone, I hope people do understand. But there's that really weird point where even recently, like, I don't even know if this makes sense, but you know, I was talking to you about how when the book came out, and everyone kept saying, man, you should be so proud of yourself. That's fucking awesome. And like, that's like so cool. And I was just like, yeah, it's like, it is. But I felt really bad that I didn't feel like that. I was just like, it just is what it is. But I think through doing this, maybe, that could sound really weird for someone who doesn't know what I'm talking about. But I think what I'm trying to say is, I think what I'm trying to say is, I found that I'm trying to value myself a lot more on hopefully just being a good person.
I think
Is that right?
I like that.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense to me. Like, and again, it's probably really aligned to your values and who you are.
But there was
as
a part
person.
of that, it was the imposter stuff as well. But also, like, I don't want to be someone. I don't know. We're talking about me too much.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's just about the thing.
Well, you like
Darcy.
feeling like, well, yeah, that's my book, that's my story. It's nothing special, so let's move on.
Yeah,
is that what you kind of
just
are?
like it's just what it is.
Maybe it is you as a person though, because you interview others and you try to bring out the best in them. But mate, your book's special.
Nah, it's a good book.
Created something.
Best book that's ever been written.
But again, like credit to you, mate. Like with everything that you've got going on as well, the fact that you get so much done, like. I'm like, there's no chance this guy's writing a book.
No.
When you told me that you were writing a book a year ago, I'm like, if this book hits the shelves, it would be mind-blowingly surprising.
Actually happened.
Yeah.
2 other bits.
Yep.
Because I did learn a lot in this.
Yeah.
I love this part about resources.
Yep.
Time, energy, money. I want you to explain this part because I don't want to fumble it up.
Cool.
But then I'll speak to my realizations, I suppose, on my behalf.
Awesome. So when I think about resources, I think about it in 3 key categories. So we've got time, we've got energy, and then we've got money, right? Or whatever the transactional tool is going to be that exists.
And you know what I love about this thing too?
Yeah.
It speaks about money.
Yeah.
Like, it is important to talk about because unfortunately, we've used it a couple of times today, like, you need money to sometimes live out the life that you want to live. So it's really relevant in this case.
I heard somebody explain it really well the other day in a little Instagram video that popped up. And it was talking about how a lot of the times one of the mistakes that we make is we look at money as a commodity, right? Like it's something that we need to store, and you store it away and you have to hoard it and you have to acquire heaps of it and then put it in there and then lock it away and then protect it, right? And it's used as a commodity. Whereas realistically, and he was sort of explaining it better than I'm about to explain it, but he was saying that money is purely a transactional tool, right? It's a transactional tool that allows you to take actions and to do things and to acquire things if you need to, right? So it's very practical. Like you do need it to sort of flow in the world, but it's also really relative to that point in time that we're existing, right? Like so say right now, you could get 100 million Australian dollars and put it all aside somewhere, but say in 4 months, I don't know, something happens to the economy or something and everyone's using Bitcoin. Now, all of a sudden, you've got this big thing hoarded that you can't actually transact on, right? So it's just simply, I like that shift of it's a transactional tool. So anyway, going back to this, is we think about the 3 key resources that we've got to play with are going to be time, energy, and money. And I think what most people historically look at, they look at maybe money or they look at time and they don't really factor in energy. Right, so really what we're doing in this part of the program is we're breaking down, it's like, okay, well, first of all, how are you just spending all your time? Because time's like the equalized resource, right? You have 24 hours, I have 24 hours, Darcy has 24 hours. Every single person, at the moment, we get given 24 hours. That's all we've got to work with, right? So we go through a process of actually breaking down, well, how am I spending those 24 hours? And breaking that down realistically, over an average week or a period of time and being like, okay, well, what are the areas that I'm putting one of my key resources into, right? Because often it can be a couple of little shifts in how we allocate our time can have such a huge impact on the moments that we can create, on how we better align with our values, on how we nourish key relationships in our life, how we perform better at work, how we fulfill some of our dreams, right? Because that's the one that everyone sort of gets given the same amount. Right? Then we've got energy, right? It's like looking at those things and then putting them through a filter of, are these activities that I'm putting my time into, are they actually energizing me, right? Like, am I getting, is it fueling me up or is it actually sapping me of energy?
Using examples there as well might be worth like looking at, for example, in business and then maybe in life. So like small business is probably more relevant than a 9 to 5 for this discussion. But business and then life and then, because just to explain that, like I love where you're going here is, say, doing different things. I'm really lucky to do different things. So like say, for example, my week's 25% More Greens, 25% Dyl and Friends, and then 50% Producey. And then in life, it's like 10% with family, probably 70% at work, 10% golf.
That's right.
That's what it was like earlier. So then,
Yeah, and then you can break it down into different buckets, like whatever you feel represents your life the best. And that's the thing, it's going to be different for everyone, right? If you're a business owner, it's probably going to be a bit different. If you're just at uni and you're just starting there, if you're a high school student, it's always going to be a little bit different.
Yep.
But you're going to get some patterns just from looking at how did you spend the last 7 days or the 7 days before that, or what does an average month look like on a weekly basis for you. And you should be able to get a pretty good picture. And we've got tools in there where you sort of fill it in with all the different areas where you're actually putting in your time, right? And then you're kind of aligning that with the energy that it gives you. Like, is this energizing time? Am I getting nourished? Or is it time that I'm spending with, and you might actually pick up here, well, shit, every time I hang out with blah, 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 it actually saps me of all of my energy. Most of the time that I'm hanging out with them, I actually feel like shit because they're judging me, or they're, questioning or criticizing me, or they just don't bring me the thing that I need that's going to nourish me. And you might even get some patterns there around, well, I've got some no-brainer moves here that I can do where I've just gotten into a habit, or I'm reacting to something and I'm spending all my time here, but I actually need to shift that a little bit. Right? Like,
do you remember the big unlock that we had? There was 2 unlocks that I had in mind that I straight away you picked up on, and it was more to do with work life.
Yeah.
One was early days was like, I was doing editing emails and all those things, going, I'm like, I fucking hate this shit. It takes me longer than ever. And I was like, well, why don't we take this, use some money to pay that then you can put that extra 15% into making more content, which will then make that back. And I was like, that sounds too logical.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So there was like those little shifts. The other one that I loved was when one thing at that stage, which was a bit of, was hard and really challenging to do, was I was finding myself catching up with a lot of people for coffees. And I was like, this is a poor use of time, like doing coffees, because you go out for an hour, half an hour to get back. And then I was finding myself resenting the situation because I was like, fucking hell, I'm wasting my time on getting coffees that then didn't lead to a good connection with the person because it wasn't valuing. So you're like, all right, well, instead of doing that, losing all those hours on those coffees a week, why don't you do a monthly catch-up and you invite 10 people to one coffee and do it that way? So then you don't have to
There you
do
go.
it. So there were just some...
Is that Run Clubby?
That's Run Clubby. That's basically Run Clubby. No, that's I haven't done that one yet.
But I love that move, right? And it's awesome because we do also have to protect, like, every decision that we make with our time, there is going to be some sort of a trade-off there. Because as I mentioned earlier, that's the one thing where we only get 24 hours, right? You get 1 extra hour of sleep, you might feel a little bit more energized, 3 less hours of sleep, but you might be able to go out for 3 extra hours and hang out with your mates, right? So there's always going to be a bit of a trade-off, but you have to find what works best for you. And then I think always thinking about how you're spending that time in alignment with the energy that it gives you or that it's going to cost you, right? The gym's a great example. You go to the gym, it's going to make you feel great in one sense, but it's also going to take energy, right? Now you got to get food and you got to refuel, you got to recover a little bit. You might not be able to, walk properly for a couple of days if you've gone too hard. Like that's going to happen as well. So there's trade-offs with the decisions that we make. And it's understanding that and how do they then link to our resources. And then the other one's money, right? Like really digging deep and just getting a high level analysis of where you sit financially. And money's one of the great things, right? Because it's been part of the business world since the dawn of time that there's all these great frameworks where you can quickly figure out how much do I make, how much am I spending, and then how do you then actually align that to your time and your energy as well, right? And when you get that right, a lot of the problems that we face, especially in the modern world right now, they can be solved just by making a few adjustments there and aligning them better. Like the amount of times I've seen people actually look at their finances and then you actually question, it's like, all right, out of all of these things that you've spent on, how many of these are actually energizing you? So when you look at that line item, does it make you smile or do you feel a bit weird about it, right? And you'll know that because it's going to be the things that are aligned to your values. It's like, that's a no-brainer. Like I'm spending money on that all the time. Then there'll be some things that are in there that you've maybe just subscribed to or they're little dopamine hits, but when you actually look at it, you're like, oh, every time I do that, like I shouldn't be getting 4 double cheeseburgers a week, right? It's like maybe I need to change that a little bit. Or you might look at it and be like, I love when I get my double cheeseburgers every week. Like it's amazing. So there's no right or wrong answer. You're like, there's no judgments in this. It's like finding the things that best align with who you are.
I love what you said then too, because like the coolest part was it always comes back to that values piece.
It's your values.
And when you look at that, that's when you know, the more you do it, the more you refine going, okay, this is that. Like if I was purchasing 7 silent room sittings a week going, okay, well, my thing was to be in a good network, connect to people and grow. That's not really what I should be spending my money on. But yeah, that was a bit of a stupid one, but there's other things that you work out like, fuck, that really doesn't align with what I'm doing
doesn't
right
align
now.
with it, yeah. And sometimes you'll just be like, oh, these are things that the old version of me is represented in the way that I'm spending my time, money and energy. Whereas the new version of me is actually a little bit different. So it's time, I can actually let some of these things go. I can shift some of these things. I can renegotiate some of these things, and I can just try a few new things as well that I then want to allocate that into.
So good, man.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of the process.
I couldn't have sold that part any worse personally, but easily the best part out of it was that you have to get it down on paper, and I was talking to my own situation, which no one else would get, which is the worst thing you do on a podcast, trying to explain it to other people. But I think if you've got to sort of do that one with your own...
You do it with your own thing.
And work it out. Because there were so many little things I was like, oh my God.
And you trust the process as well, because all the work that you've done in the first part, it makes that part actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know, the process actually gets easier as you go through it, because you've collected so much insight into where you're at. And then and this is the real key sort of unlock, is once you have a lot of clarity on who you are and where you're at right now in life, it makes it a lot easier to make future plans.
Yep.
And that, because a lot of the times we don't actually make any shifts because we genuinely don't know where we're at right now. It's like you're sitting, like the analogy might be the GPS. It's like the satellite can't even find you, but you're trying to plug in some destination. And then you're like, why can't I get to where I need to go? Because you actually don't know where you're starting from. And you don't really know where you're at right now.
Towards, I don't want to spoil the ending, because we'll leave that for anyone that's doing it. But I love the point that there is a roadmap that you can go home with, and you end up filling out all the things that you sort of want to improve or sustain or even stop doing, and you work out how you can do that, through key metrics month by month, and by scoring it through your values and all those things as well, which is really, really cool. I've actually been back through mine as well. It's so cool to see the ones that I've ticked off, but also there's ones that like I haven't. And it's like, fuck, there's, it's a process. You're not going to get it.
You don't get it all. You only want to
get,
like, sometimes you even say you had 10 things that you wanted to do. If you do 3 of them, again, it's still probably going to have a pretty significant impact on your life, right? You're going to be in a better spot than where you started. Yeah,
mate, it's so exciting. I'm really, as I said, I've been begging you to come back in for a while and have a chat about it. I've spoken about it on the minis on a heap of occasions, and I wouldn't, like, again, it's really been beneficial for me. I'd love for many people to try it out. So whenever it is available, it will be.
Yeah, it will be.
When this is out. Cool.
Yeah, we're hoping December. Sometime.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be ready to go, and we'll sort of start with a bit of a beta launch and get it out there. Again, because we're like massive on continuous improvement as well. Like one of the things for us, just as individuals, is like, this thing isn't like a traditional business venture or anything. This is like one of the ways that we really feel like we want to positively help people. So it's going to also be, with the first group that goes through, it's like, all right, how do we keep adding value and making sure that we're getting as much feedback to just keep improving it as well as we go on. So it's going to be pretty cool. Like, our vision is, as millions of people go through it, it's like, hey, like, how does this improve it for the entire ecosystem? And then how do you share all the learnings across it all as well? That's kind of the dream, what we're aiming for.
It's exciting, man. I love it. Well, once it comes out, we'll make sure that the community know about it if they're keen to do it. I think it'd be really, really cool.
We'll figure out a way to look after your community.
That's it, my boy. Hey, we're going to a comedy show tonight.
Oh, I know, I'm excited.
Andrew Schultz.
Yeah.
Schultz?
Yeah.
You know what do you know another thing that I got out of this?
What?
Guess what it was?
What?
Because my moments thing,
again,
was doing things, like going to concerts and stuff, right? You know how I said how much again, I've just totally forgotten about this. I've just actioned one.
There you go.
I said how much I loved, like, what show did we go to recently?
What did we go to?
And something. Well, you got tickets to Blink 182 for us next year.
Yeah.
We did the Open, obviously.
I
went to Loyal Kana recently.
Yeah,
I went
nice.
to another couple of gigs. I've been to a few gigs lately, but that was a part of it going, I love seeing live music, but I never fucking do it. That was when this opportunity came up. I was like, I'm booking it in. Because I'm not a big booker in guy. Like, my pet peeve of Juzz and all my mates is like, I'll never plan things. So
I love it.
Done
And
another
you
one.
end up getting all these weird lists. Like I've got a list of all these restaurants that I want to eat at now, and it's like I feel that there's so much art in really cool food, and we live in Melbourne, one of the greatest food cities in the world here. So it's like, all right, well, go and experience these chefs' creations as much as possible, and you start unlocking these things, right, when you go through these exercises.
Tell us about, before you finish up, when you went to Dubai on the way home.
Yeah.
And you ate at that restaurant.
Yeah, like so found this, was lucky enough to get into what was ranked as like the 11th best restaurant in the world.
11, so you didn't get the top 10.
No, I didn't get in the
Just
top 10. Got number 11, but geez.
Must have been shit.
Mate, there's a lot of restaurants out there. To be the
I know,
11th
that's
in the
true.
world is pretty phenomenal. And yeah, went out there, and yeah, it was like full fine dining type of experience. And because I was there, but I was traveling by myself, so I'm pretty sure they thought that I was like a food critic or something. And this restaurant, it's like in this room, and they cook everything live sort of in front of you. Awesome kitchen setup. And then there's maybe only 10 tables set up in the room. And they're in like, it's a relatively large room, but I was put right in the middle with like this spotlight, and I'm just by myself. And then
You reckon they thought you were like a Michelin
yeah,
star?
I think they
like-
thought I was some sort of thing. And then they're all like looking at my reaction every time that I ate the food.
Were you
and
mindfully eating?
I was mindfully eating that day. You had to. Like, I don't think it was a place where you could scoff it down.
Was it as good as like, what was the, to be in that 11, was it
Yeah.
the experience, was it the culinary experience? Was it the waiting on you? Was it everything? Just like,
Yeah, like I think the big thing that stood out for me was the story. Like they told you this amazing
Right.
story behind every dish, and like this one was sort of like an Indian sort of fusion-y type of experience, and they take you all the way through India. So like the waiter would come up with a map and would be like, we're starting in this region,
That's cool.
right? And then this is what this dish is. And there was like one dish that there was 21 different dishes, like all some small, like they're all pretty small. There was one dish where it was like a performance. So there was 10 staff members that had music on, and they're all just walking around layering the dish up.
Wow.
Yeah, and then it looks like this beautiful piece of art. So it was just like, it's
It's incredible.
more like a
It's a
performance,
performance. Yeah,
right?
wow.
Yeah, it wasn't like a normal eating experience.
Are you sure you were at a restaurant?
Yeah, I hope so. There was food. I don't know what it was, but yeah, it was special. Like, it's just something, again, it was art. It
Yeah.
was pure
You
art
know what
that
it was?
was created, which is cool. What?
It was a moment.
It was a moment.
Love it, man.
It was such a cool moment.
Hey, we'll be
This
back.
is a moment.
This is a moment, man.
Yeah, this is a moment.
We'll be back. I appreciate you, my boy. And onwards and upwards from here. I'm looking forward to what's next for you. Looking forward to what's next for us. We're still planning in our 2024 excursion.
Yeah, we'll
We're
do an
committed to
adventure.
one excursion a year.
Let's
Well,
do
I
it.
have you do like 7.
Yeah.
I've said I'll do 1.
Yeah.
Could be the Open. No, sorry. We've done the Open. Could be Augusta. Could be...
We're naming them now. We'll decide later.
Okay, we'll decide.
Paris Olympics.
Paris Olympics.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Who knows? We'll have to
see.
think of something.
Illy XX.
Mate, much love, Dylan.
Much love, Illy.
You're a good man.
Bye.